Hello, everybody, beautiful people on planet Earth. I am here today to help us out in what is a normal pickle that a lot of people that I know ask me about, which is they try to take a break, they try to stop and rest for a second, and then as they're resting, they actually worry that they might be wasting time. They worry that they're not productive enough. They worry that they might be lazy on days where they feel tired. And so this particular episode of People Always Ask is about how to worry less about being productive. And actually, the parentheses on this that's actually kind of nice is that it's not just how to worry less about being productive, but it actually makes you more productive to worry less about productivity. So it's a win-win in terms of outcomes, because most people actually, by stressing out, they spend a lot of energy and they work hard in the wrong way. So, I mean, let's just jump into it, because we don't worry for no reason. I always say every feeling has a function. So worry serves us to some degree, but sometimes we can tell ourselves a little lie about how much the worry actually serves the greater purpose in the big design of our life. We think without it, somehow we're not going to get things done at all. But that's not necessarily true. So as we get into this, this is probably going to sound pretty normal. And part of the reason that it sounds normal is because in America, one of the biggest things that kind of gets promoted is that you should at all times be spending your time as if it's money. So that means you need to be using it as productively as possible. And if you're not, then you're wasting it, right? And so that is where most of us kind of fall. And we want to be as productive and use all our strengths and all the good stuff that we have towards productivity. But realistically, worry is not the most helpful thing in the world. So let's talk about why people do this. First myth that most people believe is that somehow if I worry more, it's going to facilitate like this action-based problem solving. My worry helps me get things done. And so this is like half true, because on the one hand, worry does actually make your body get into a state where you're more ready to do stuff. On the other hand, it doesn't make it easy to focus on things that are not important for survival. So if we're trying to do something that's productive, but also requires delicate planning, creativity, some sort of excitement and passion to be a part of the process, is going to be very difficult to do both. And so it's not to say that we don't need it, but here's the reality. Worry facilitates action, but it reduces your efficiency, in part because when you're worried, you can't focus very well. Right? So even if I'm trying to do task A, I'm going to end up doing task B because my mind is kind of scattered all over the place. And I know I'm not the only one who's ever done this, where you have so much going on that you actually start one task, you get kind of sidetracked because another task pops into your mind, and then you open up a new tab, or you get your phone out and you start doing the second task. That's kind of where worry keeps our brain and keeps our body. It keeps us really scattered. So the hard part about this is that yes, you want to be activated and figure out what you need to do and make an action plan and all of that. But when you're actually doing the stuff, you don't want to be worried in that moment. You actually want to do the activity in the least stressful way as possible, right? And so this might seem weird, but there's two types of worrying. And we all know this to some degree. Productive worrying that actually helps us do something, it fuels something, it really gets us going somewhere. And unproductive worrying, which sometimes can be distracting and unhelpful, like when you're trying to take a break, but you can't because you keep thinking about all the things that you need to do, or you want to go to sleep, but you can't because your to-do list keeps coming up. And so here's the first tip. The first tip is to set aside time to worry productively. And so some of you guys are probably thinking, what the hell would that even look like? I guess once a week, I could probably take some time and do this. This is not a once a week kind of thing. This is every day. So the first thing is you set a time limit, you schedule it into your day, ideally at the end of your day. And then you really sit and take time to delegate out random worries to this time when it's not that time, right? So that means that, let's be specific, right? I'm going to say that every single day at the end of my day, if this was normal life and not a quarantine, maybe on my commute home, but during a quarantine, maybe before I stop, break work, and then go sort of and take care of myself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 20 minutes and I'm going to make sure that in that 20 minutes, I feel all of the worries. I let myself worry all about it. I might create a to-do list in this time, right? And so one of the things that is okay to do here is to start delegating which things you really feel like need to get out, get on a list, make sure that it's somewhere, right? And so, even for those of you watching right now, never keep a whole list of to-dos in your mind. Most people might have a to-do list. They might have too many to-do lists, right? But this, realistically, it should be externalized enough that it feels doable, right? And we want to make sure that when we're writing this stuff, there's two types of worries that you're going to have. One is stuff that you're going to be able to do right here, right now, and create a plan for, in which case, sure, create a plan for it, do something about it whenever you really can. And then there's going to be some stuff that you might need to delegate to another time, or maybe something that you really kind of need to kind of get help with from somebody else. And so we might want to take that and prioritize some other type of plan around that, right? But if we can't figure it out at all, keep it on the to-do list, but it's not going to be tomorrow, right? Just take your time out to worry. And then after you're done, really take time out to then stop, take a breath, right? And delegate your task time to really doing one task at a time. Instead of taking all those worries all the way through your day, designate a worry time every single day. Make sure that you get whatever out, write it down, journal, do whatever you do when you worry, right? Pray. And this can really be just a time that you set aside. Now, what some people also worry about is that if I don't worry, I'm not going to do it at all, because maybe low key, I'm kind of lazy. So the myth becomes that somehow being worried in and of itself is what's motivating you to do all these tasks you don't really want to do, but you have to do. Here's the hard thing. It sort of is and isn't what motivates you to get things done. Worry is a defense mechanism. So that means that while it kind of makes you want to do stuff, it also makes you want to do stuff that you can get done, which may not be something that you feel about the biggest task on your to-do list or the thing that you're the most worried about. And so what actually happens, and this is the recipe for procrastination, if you were ever wondering why it is that it's so tempting to procrastinate stuff, when we feel overwhelmed by something, we kind of want to put it off. And so what ends up happening is we do put it off. But if we're worried, we can find smaller tasks to do that are kind of important, but maybe not as important as that overwhelming task. And we'll do that because it makes us feel better. It makes the worry feel better, but it doesn't necessarily accomplish in the big picture, when we're calm, maybe the most important thing. And so the most important thing is that we really actually want to avoid overload. So what we're trying to do, what our bodies are trying to do when we procrastinate, is we're trying to be like, this seems like a lot. I don't really know how and when I'm going to get it done, but it seems like it's going to take a long time. And so what we end up doing is we try to make it more manageable. And sometimes that means we don't do it at all. Or we do it at the final hour when we're kind of freaking out, and we pull that all-nighter. We do whatever we have to do. But as we get older, and as we're out of school, and as the structure is less about the system acting on you, let's say you own your own business or you want to, the motivation has to come from a place that's not this stressed, debilitating place where it's like, I'm going to get it done, but not till the last night. The place that you really want to have is this sustainable motivation that you can actually hold on to for long periods of time if this is something you really want to keep doing. And so the problem with relying on worry for your motivation is that you're going to burn out. You're going to burn out because it's not a state of growth and digestion and rest. Worry is a defense mechanism. So that means that what your body is doing is it's going into a stress state. And what's happening there, yes, it's helping you survive. Yes, it's helping you get by, but it's not good for your heart. It's not good for your emotional state. It's not good for the relationships that you have in your life. And eventually it's going to burn you out. And so the tip for this, right? Because of course you have to worry sometimes. Of course you're going to be like, there's stuff that I need to worry about. It has to get done. Is that when you work, you want to work smart, not hard. And I say this all the time, which means target and focus your efforts. So now you're taking this worry time aside, right? You're actually taking time aside to address your worry, to give it space, to be like, girl, what we worried about today? Because I can feel my heart racing. I can feel myself distracted. What are we worried about? Let's get it out. Now that we've done that, when do we address the big things that we're worried about? And so the answer is early and often. And this is because the longer we wait, the more rewarding it feels to our body to avoid this thing. But most things are harder to think about than they are to do. So what we really want to do is, one, Pick your to-dos. I'm sure you got a to-do list. Maybe you got 15 to-do lists, but we got to get really specific. When you're picking your to-dos, we got to prioritize. And I'm not saying prioritize by which thing is actually the most important, because maybe they all feel really important, but here's what your body will be able to tell you. Which thing brings you the most worry? So you can rate it on a scale of, let's say, 0 to 5, 0 being that I'm not really worried about this at all. I might just need to go get some bananas from the grocery store, right? And then 5 being like, this is actually something that if I don't do it, it's going to really, really cause me a lot of stress, worry, problems, harm. And so that might be something like avoiding a medical appointment, a legal phone call, things like that, that you know have to get done, and that they're actually just a lot to think about. And so we're pushing them off. So what we want to do is, if we're rating 0 to 5, we're just going to pick a few things to focus on, right? We're targeting and focusing. So if we have one day that we want to do, I just want you to pick 3 things per day, right? And maybe you can do more, maybe you could do less, but it doesn't really matter. It's not about the number. It's about getting something done and feeling rewarded by getting the thing done on your list, which is actually reducing an anxiety and in your body. So once you are done with picking your to-dos, you're ranking the level of worry 0 to 5. And after you have ranked them, just focus in on the worries that are 4 and 5s. That's it. Because when you're worried, what's going to end up happening is it's going to feel better to do those things that are a 0 through a 3, because they're more easy, they're less stressful. Our bodies want to avoid feeling stressed and worried and overwhelmed and incapable. So pick the things that are 4 or 5s. Only pick 1 to 3 things, right? And as you're doing the task, if it's a big task, you might want to just pick one thing, right? If I have an essay due for the end of the year, whatever, and it's 16 pages, I'm not going to do 3 tasks in this sort of way. I'm going to do one thing and I'm going to focus on it so that I can actually get it done. And so that means that we're not doing this forever. We're not worrying about it forever. We're designating a time. We're ranking the worries. We're doing the to-do list, right? And then you're going to work for 20 minutes and rest for 5 minutes. And when I say rest, because this is what we're here for, right? Some people don't actually know what it looks like to rest. So what you're doing during this rest period is you're actually soothing your body. You are not just stepping away from your work for a second. So why don't we try right now, taking a second to rehearse a breathing technique that you can use during your break that would actually help you to take an actual physical break from this. And so a lot of people probably know about a technique called belly breathing. It's just breathing down into your belly. So your belly starts to expand a little bit like a balloon's inside of there. And so what you want to do when you're resting for your 5 minutes. Now, if you've been sitting, you might want to change your orientation. You might want to stand, right? And so when you're taking your break, what it's going to look like is you're going to breathe in to your belly, focusing in on your breath. And you want to breathe in like you're smelling something delicious, like you're smelling, that fried chicken, down home, coming down the street, or like you're smelling those greens that, smell delicious from all the way down the hallway. I live in a Dominican building, so sometimes they just be cooking stuff that smells super bomb, some, rice, some all sorts of stew and stuff. So just imagine you're smelling, and that's the breath you want. And when you're exhaling, it should just be gentle, like you're blowing out a candle. We're not breathing in hard and breathing out hard. That actually can induce panic. And so we don't want to do that. If you're the type of person whose mind is busy, I suggest you do something during your break that might busy yourself. You might want to take a 5-minute dance break, right? For me, that's kind of the break that I need when I feel really overwhelmed by something. I'm going to take 5 minutes. It's going to take 2 songs, right? And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do my work. Work for 20 minutes. And all that you want to do is work for 20, rest for 5. Whether the 5 minutes is you sitting on a massager, whether it's you doing a guided meditation on an app that just takes 5 minutes, or whether it's progressive relaxation, which just includes you going from your scalp and going muscle by muscle by muscle down your body and just sort of tensing and relaxing. So you notice that instead of whatever's going on in your mind. That's the type of rest that your body needs, so that when it comes back to the task, it's not freaking out, it's focused, right? And so now when we get work done from that space, if we need to be creative, we can be creative. if we need to come up with new and original ideas, and if we need to be able to sort of calmly put together logical thinking, that space is one we can do it from. Unfortunately, when we're really worried and we're trying to do work, our work suffers. The quality of our work suffers because we're not able to access the full creativity, all the ideas, all the logic. We're just in survival mode. We just need to get it done. And I know I've sat and written essays with my fingers out and my eyes up, just trying to get it done. And that's not something that really gets my best work out. When I'm really in my best place is when I'm sort of thinking and flowing, as I call it, in a space that feels really safe and interesting for me, where I can be curious and creative and passionate instead of just kind of getting it done to get it done. And even if I'm getting it done, to be focused enough to do a good job. Because I'm the type of person, I don't care whether I hate it or I love it. If I'm going to put my name on it, I want it to be good quality, right? And so that's something that becomes a really big part of anybody's anxiety when they worry about productivity. So take work for 20 minutes. And so after you've done this for an hour, once you've done this 3 times, take a longer break. Some things are going to take longer than an hour. In fact, most things in life will. So if you're planning for something, if you're putting together a proposal, if you're doing things that are really just sort of really long haul, big efforts, break it up, make it manageable, and one of the things that we often do is when we look at a big task, sometimes it can feel totally undoable, but if we break it into smaller parts, we certainly can get it done. And I know that it sort of clicked for me once in the DMV, that no matter how far away my number is, all I can do is wait for the next number, right? It's not like if I sit here and worry about how long it's going to be before I get called any faster. That's not how it works. The time goes by whether or not I'm worrying and freaking out and using it unproductively, or whether I'm sitting there and chilling and I'm getting stuff done for myself. The numbers are going to pass at the same pace, right? I only have control over what I have control over. And so this also means, and this is something that a lot of us really have to struggle with, that when we can't do things alone, or when it's inefficient to do things alone, try to ask people and outsource your work. If you don't have to do things by yourself, don't. If you don't have to do everything right now, plan out to do it later. There does not have to be an urgent rush on every single thing that you do, so long as you know that you will get it done. And if you don't think you're going to feel confident doing it alone, do it together. Do it with other people. Get resources and people in your life that make things feel more doable. That way, when you worry about them, it won't get you into a zone where you start to freeze because you feel so overwhelmed, you actually don't feel like you can do it anymore. And when we start to believe these things, right, that worry is actually the thing that's making us do well, instead of thinking that if I just focus on one thing at a time, I can do almost anything. It really distorts the reality that you're allowed to take breaks. In fact, it's necessary to take breaks in order for you to really be your best self, which is why the last tip for this, and this is always going to be my tip for you, is to listen to your body, which means that when you are completely tapped out and completely exhausted, one of the things that you have to give yourself permission to say is that I will not be as productive. I will not be as creative. I won't even be as likable if I stay in this place where I push myself and go and go and go, rather than showing people that I have a limit, right? And that the best work that they're going to get from me is going to come from a place where it's well balanced, right? So I need to show other people that that's true, but I also need to prove it to myself. This is really the truth. If you've never done it, one of the things that's absolutely never going to happen is that if your brain doesn't ever associate the fact that you could take breaks and do tasks calmly with the fact that you could also succeed. If those two things don't ever happen together, you're going to start to tell yourself, hey, without this anxiety, maybe I won't be successful. Maybe I won't be loved. Maybe I won't be promoted. Maybe I won't make any money at all. And that's the lie that America would like you to believe. The truth of the matter, though, is that your body is going to set limits on you, whether you like it or not. And either you're going to get sick, have panic attacks, get migraines, have sleep issues, have digestion issues. And this is not a guess. This is what comes along with a lot of worries. Or you're going to start to balance out your life so that you can live a full life. Because Black people, when we get stressed, and we're stressed all the time because of microaggressions, work, relationships, all the places, our heart gets affected and our lives are cut short. And so what we don't want to do, in addition to all the violence that happens to us, is to inflict more violence on our bodies by not giving ourselves permission to really say, hey, you know what? You deserve, and the only way you will survive is by creating balance for yourself. You can survive in this trauma state where you're doing the best that you can just to get by, but realistically, you deserve more than that. You don't have to do that. And so if you're in a workspace that promotes the idea that there's no such thing as a healthy break, that you're being lazy, you also really need to look at the culture of work and even in your family, right? Because there's a lot of families that promote this ideal is that, well, you should never be sick. You should never say no to work. You should always work, 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 work. There is no amount of money that's going to replace your life. There's no amount of money that is going to replace the sort of unique stuff that comes along with your story. And so if nobody's alive to tell your story, if nobody's alive to be the person that you really are meant to be, then we're going to get stuck with a person who's always stuck in defense mode and doesn't ever really produce anything from this sort of great safe place that all of us have access to. But some of us leave in childhood because we go through so much that it feels safer just to worry about what everybody else wants from us. But that's not the only way to survive, right? We can make our to-do list. We can set aside our time to worry about the worries. But in the meantime, let's do our work in a way that's logical, that feels safe. Because what the result will be, if you just take these 2 tips, just these 2, is that it will actually retrain your body. And so even though it seems so simple, right? All I'm saying is that, well, first, you just need to set aside some time to worry instead of worrying all damn day. Right. And then also you need to target and focus what you're working on and do it for 20 minutes at a time and do the stuff that you're worried about most. That seems so simple, but what it's going to end up doing is it's going to train you that it's better for you to take breaks because you're going to learn what it feels like to give yourself permission to have balance. And when you take a break, what are we doing? We're doing some grounding stuff. We're dancing around. We're using our body. We're breathing into our stomach. We're doing guided meditations. We're doing things that soothe us, that get our energy out, that release that kind of tension that builds up when we're worried and ground us back down. Even something as simple as opening your eyes wider and looking around the room that you're in can be something that can start a break off so that you're back in your body. So as we reach towards the end of the episode, I'm realizing I have no idea where I have put my tarot cards for the day. So even though I'm usually well prepared to grab a card for y'all, oh, you know what? I do know where it is. But we're going to need to pause this for just a second so that I can go grab my damn cards for y'all and tell you what the lesson from the ancestors might be. All right. Pardon me. You about to see behind the scenes of what goes on. And she's back. It didn't take long. They're never far. All right. And so let's see what lesson we had today, because I am so curious, you know, what it is that the lessons that we have for today. Because this in America, if you worry about being productive, you are in good company, because that's exactly what they want you to do, right? Is that they want you to never feel like you're good enough, never pretty enough, never productive enough. There's always a need to buy more, do more, work more, be more, right? And so that really feeds a system. It doesn't really so much feed you. And so it does put a lot of us in a very protective state a lot of the time. So let's see what card we have here. So this is the Strength card. Excuse the blonde lady. You know, I got my new set coming, but it's coming from across the world. So the Strength card is not something to take for granted, right? But the Strength card a lot of times has to do with overcoming base instincts. So when we're talking about defense mechanisms, this card makes a lot of sense. And so this is talking about self-love, emotional strength, mental courage, inner tranquility, compassion, and tolerance, right? And so this really is talking about overcoming some of those automatic thoughts, those automatic beliefs that we get fed, moderating your excesses. So maybe I want to work and work and work and work and take no breaks. but trying to do it gently and holistically, right? So not going into substance abuse to take a break, not going into the extremes of totally procrastinating and not getting things done in avoidance, right? Because that can feel good when we feel really worried. Loving and respecting yourself and others. So that's also a balance, right? Productivity versus self care. And then having the courage of your convictions. So taking responsibility for your actions, triumph of love over hate. And so worry is also coming out of a place of self criticism and self hate. And so when we're talking about strength and overcoming those instincts that can come so naturally to us, but we have the power to move through them, the strength card can represent all of those things. And so I hope for all of you guys that you recognize that within you, whether it seems impossible or not right now, you can train your brain and your body to worry less. And in worrying less, you will actually become more efficient, which is the most crazy backwards thing in the world, right? But it's like the same thing with anything, right? All of a sudden, being vulnerable actually opens way for connection. Taking breaks actually makes way for being more productive. Somehow the balances of life, the sort of self-care and the giving, when mixed together and only when mixed together, give us sort of the right recipe to get what we need. And, I heard something interesting that the word courage actually comes from the Greek word core, which means heart. And so it actually originally means to live with all of your heart. And so it takes courage to do things that are good for you, but it is only authentically, right, living with all of you, to trust your feelings, to listen to your body, to take breaks when you feel overwhelmed, to give yourself permission to be worried, right? Living with your whole self, as crazy as you might feel, is the only way to actually feeling a little bit more sane. And so if we don't accept that, if we don't have compassion for that, we will just get stuck and be running in circles. So until next time, trust your strength, be balanced, take care of you, and please worry, but only try to do it once a day in your designated worry time. Otherwise, if you ain't got no plan of action or you're not about to address it, designate it to the time and get it out of your mind, okay? All right? Because we don't need to be doing this all day, every day. All right, y'all? Other than that, try to make a list of things to do during your break so that you actually know what to do. Because I know plenty of y'all got a list of what to do, but you don't know what to do during a break. So find some meditations. But, find some meditations, find some breathing techniques that you like, find some dance playlists that you want to dance to, find a massager that feels good on your head or on your neck, find something to do, and really kind of make a go-to list for yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes of playing a game like Tetris, which is actually found to be really helpful for mindfulness, strangely enough, and getting your mind off of stuff. So just find something to do during your breaks. Make a list in addition to your to-dos. Take care of you. And I'll see you here next week for People Always Ask. See you next week. Love ya.